Okay, let's dive into this follower's question, Michelle, and it is all about skin.
Hi, Jen. Just would like a bit of information about my chest. It's very itchy, just near my décolletage. My neck sometimes a bit itchy. It's not really inflamed or anything, but it does feel dry as well. But it's mainly the itch that's making me really irritable. I am prone to eczema dermatitis, but I haven't got anything else going on. I've had perioral dermatitis in my mouth, chin area before, but at this stage it's just my chest. I'm wondering if that means anything in particular that I should be trying to focus on. But yeah, if I could have some help with that, that would be amazing.
Okay, I love skin. Skin was my journey with acne and pimples and rashes and all sorts. So if you go way back to when I first started this podcast in early April 2020, I believe it was, you'll hear my pain story. And of course, now the podcasts are just all very off the cuff. So skin itchy around the décolletage area, so just below the collarbone on the upper chest, and also the neck, it's a little bit dry. I just need to say this back to myself so I can anchor it in. History of eczema, dermatitis, and perioral dermatitis, which I found fascinating when you said this, Michelle. Okay, so first of all, our body is always giving us messages. Now, these would be physical, physiological type symptoms. Some of you may not have any physical symptoms, but there is still messages in your body, being your mental body, behavioral, energetic, spiritual. So it goes beyond physical, but let's chat about this. There are a few conditions or things that happen that I give a very consistent interpretation around, and skin is one of them. However, people often say to me, your work is like Louise Hay. And I think Louise Hay is amazing and the doors that she has opened up for people. However, I don't actually follow her work. And I think it's an entry point into looking at yourself on a deeper level, because I actually really find that there is a solid answer for every condition. It's very subjective because we're all very individual and we all get affected differently from different conditions. But skin is one of those ones that I give an overarching interpretation around on a metaphysical level. So what does skin conditions mean? Whenever your skin is connected, your biggest organ, it is the boundary between your internal world and your external world. And I find that skin conditions will usually present when we have this inner knowing, this intuition, but we're not speaking up about it. We're not expressing our truth. We're not sharing it with the world. And it is because we often fear the criticism, the judgment, and what other people will think. Okay, so if any of you are also familiar with chakra work, this is usually what I am helping people with. Working through your lower three chakras, your base, your sacral, your solar plexus. And the solar plexus also has to do with stepping into your truth, speaking it, getting over the criticism and judgment, because the reality is that someone is always going to criticize and judge you. Hopefully not to your face, but that may happen. Okay. So that's why the deeper emotional work is really important to help you when you get to that stage when you know, oh my gosh, this is what I've got to do. I've got to express myself, that you can actually handle it and hold it all. Okay. There's a different level of work when you start making moves towards the thing that you actually desire, coming out off the back of working on the pain that you have stored and experienced. So that's the overarching theme of skin, but I do want to break it down to the location and the energy of it. Okay. So I look at the quality of what's going on, and I'm going to use pimples and rashes as a little bit of an example. So you can get a blackhead, you can get a pussy whitehead, you can get a cystic acne nodule, and they all hold very different energy for me. And if you could imagine, especially if you're someone who's experienced this, you almost get a different feeling around, well, what's been held in here as to why this pimple is behaving this way and presenting this way. Rashes as well. We can get dry, flaky rashes that are itchy and non-itchy, red or just bumpy. We can have rashes that are bubbly and full of moisture, wet and weeping, incredibly red or just splotchy and dotty, and they can be dry and flaky. So again, these all have an energy behind them. So that's why it's not just about skin. It then becomes about where is the location of the skin. This is décolletage and the neck area. So that's going to tell me something that I'm going to dive into, and what is the quality of it. So whenever there is like inflammation, which could be itchy or not, it could just be red, and itching as well, is I look at this like this, an itch, a stimulation of wanting to bring something out to the surface. Now, scratching an itch can also be very pleasurable, but it's also very reactive. It's like, oh, if I just scratch this, then it will go away. But anyone that has had chronic itch or rashes, hives, things like that, you know that if it's the itchy form, actually scratching the itch makes it worse. And this is where I actually use scratching an itch as an analogy to explain inflammation to someone, inflammation in the body, because you'll scratch it because it feels good, because you want to fix it. But then as you scratch it more and more, as you leave it alone and it starts to irritate, you scratch it more, then you start to wear away the skin, then it starts to get raw, and then maybe it gets infected. So actually, this is a really good metaphor for when we put too much masculine energy into something. When we do, we actually make things worse a lot of the time. Okay. So scratching the itch is, what are you trying to bring out? What is your body trying to express? This is also the same as inflammation. So if I look at redness or inflammation, is that tells me that someone wants to get something out. So really in this sense, they want to speak something, but they're really just holding this boundary in front of themselves as well, for fear of criticism and judgment, what other people are going to think about them, what their friends, what their family, what their peers are going to think. So the inflammation I then look at with redness or heat as anger. The energy is anger. Now, anger can be very positive as well, but we usually know anger in its harmful form, where it's verbally abusive and thrown out, it's the yelling, it's the screaming, maybe it's physical, maybe it's emotional abuse. But the anger of like, this isn't pleasant to be around. And I think there's a flip side to everything. Anger can be healthy. Anger in its healthy form is when it's used as transformative energy, when it's put into use and it becomes creative. So you have the fire that creates the warmth. So my interpretation here is that the anger isn't being channeled. Okay, so then it comes out in the skin, and then this becomes the thing that we focus on. But if you have a desire and you put the energy into creating that, you're not going to have space and time to really think about these little things, or just catch yourself whether or not you get involved in other people's issues. Okay, so it's, where is this anger focused? Where is your intention? Where is your energy going? And because maybe it's not focused in this way and making moves into the path that you desire, it's then manifesting in this other way. And then your work is to find out, what is this deeper message that my skin has to share with me? Because right now what I'm doing is I'm giving you an interpretation based on my experience of working with many people and some similar messages that come up. But I always say you've got to learn how to process your emotions. I teach it with the release process, because go and find out in a few minutes what your skin has to tell you. And the messages are so fascinating, sometimes laughable. It's often quite incredibly simple as to, why am I here? And therefore, what do you actually need to do? Rather than the mind just taking over and thinking, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and being too masculine. Okay. So talked about skin overall, the quality of it being itchy. I threw in a few other things. And now let's look at location, which is really interesting, linking in with the perioral dermatitis. Okay, so the location, décolletage, just under the collarbone. So I would classify that as the chest area and then the neck. So I always look at location, no matter what the condition, disease state, or pain is. And this represents the heart chakra. So I actually directed Michelle before I had time to answer this, to go and listen to a podcast called The Heart and Sacral Connection. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about it now, but I think it's interesting for you to maybe go back and listen to that and just hear if it's evolved, because I don't listen back to any of my past stuff. I just keep on moving forwards, but maybe I'm going to add new layers to this. So anything that affects the chest area. So this is why these questions help everyone, because it's not just about a rush. Anything that is manifesting in your chest area tells me that you've got something that you're holding on to in your heart chakra. And the heart chakra governs emotions on the negative space, which is what I help people process around hatred, resentment, jealousy, betrayal, sense of injustice. So just know what comes up in your mind when I say those words. Maybe there's like a million things, and then they become your things that you've got to process. Now, what's really key is that I said earlier, I'm often working with people at the base, sacral, and soul level. Is the heart is the next stage. You know, is ultimate. The ultimate is to come into the heart space with any of your work, love and compassion and understanding for people, even if you agree to disagree. But whenever the heart is affected with feelings of hatred, resentment, betrayal, jealousy, sense of injustice, I always know it's got something to do with someone that the person is in relationship with. Now, not just intimate relationship, and that's why I think I'll tell you to go back and listen to that heart sacral. It's relationships on all scales, past, present, future, relatives, intimate, children, fertility, all that kind of stuff. So then what is it that you've got to process? And this is why I go move through those levels of the chakras and what is stored emotionally, because there is so much past stuff that people just kind of sweep under the carpet or think is irrelevant. It can be big stuff, but it's often small stuff. Okay, so that is the emotion that you're storing that your body is trying to tell you. And what I find interesting is that I had a history of perioral dermatitis. So this is a really interesting kind of like rashy, small pimply reaction that people can get. Now, it's commonly a reaction from using cortisone on your face. To be honest, I would just, even if they say the cortisone is safe for your face, I would not go near it. It's like this rebound reaction. And then the treatment often is low-grade antibiotics for a very long period of time. But I have met people who have cleared it without taking that. But gosh, it can take months to years. And of course, now knowing this emotional work, I wonder if we could speed it up a little bit more. So it usually perioral, so it's around the oral cavity. This was on Michelle's chin, which base chakra. So base chakra for me is basic needs, sense of survival. Now, most people that I converse with, you've got your basic needs covered, although we often subjectively feel like we don't, but roof over your head, clothes, warmth, water, shelter. Okay. The modern day sense of survival is money and the relationship that we have with money, which is so subjective as well, sometimes a little bit skewed. I'm going to be doing a masterclass, a 3-day money masterclass, 22nd, 23rd, 24th of March for anyone who's a member of the Moth Portal. So I'll put information in the show notes as to how you can join the Moth Portal, get access to all my masterclasses and mini courses, and come and join me live for that 3-day money masterclass. So then it's money stuff and then values. Like, do you know what your values are? This is what this might be telling you around your chin. Now, the fact though that you've got it around, well, if you've got it around your lips, I found this fascinating because the lips is the secondary area where issues with the sacral chakra shows up. So hopefully you can hear from what I'm sharing. It's like, right, it starts with the heart. We know about the skin, but it comes down to relationships. You might not have stuff going on in your hips and pelvis, which is the primary for your sacral chakra, but it's manifesting in a secondary area on your lips. And I did recently, I'm pretty sure it's on the podcast or it's on my social media. It's talking about cold sores and blisters on the lips. And this is actually a really common reaction that happens in my courses or when I'm working with one-to-one clients when they're in the early days of processing their emotions, is that, yeah, they might have a susceptibility to cold sores, but then when they start releasing and the immune system starts to get a little bit wobbly, then they often break out in these cold sores, these blisters on their lips. And then that really highlights to me what they've got to work on. And when they work on the emotions, expand their capacity, their nervous system can stretch a little bit more. They find that they get less bouts, less intense, less frequent bouts of these cold sores, and then eventually, hopefully not at all. But it's not that the cold sores are bad. It's the cold sores are giving us a message as to where are we out of balance, pushing too hard, out of alignment. Okay. So perioral dermatitis, and then I would be always going back to, well, when you had the perioral dermatitis, when the rash came up on your chest and on your neck or the itchy skin, what was going on in your life? But the other interesting thing is that you also touched on having a history of eczema and dermatitis. So I've got no idea what you look like, or I might have caught a glimpse of you on a group call, is that you're getting a glimpse into the pillars that I teach. So emotional release, identifying what emotions you're storing so you can release on them, which is the work of the chakras. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Ayurvedic doshas. Okay, so with the Ayurvedic doshas, my biggest fear in sharing this is that you're going to go down this tunnel of just Ayurveda. And it's not about that. It's about encompassing all these bits and pieces. Is I wonder if you've got a predominant Pitta type dosha. And this is what I talk about in my story and a lot of my introductions to my masterclasses, so people understand how I got into this work, is I'm very predominant with my Pitta energy. And I was angry as a teenager, and some would argue that I get a little bit angry now. And I had massive skin issues with the acne and the rashes. So when I know someone's true nature, their constitution, I can also tell when they're going out of balance mentally before it hits a crisis point, what their tendencies are. And also on a health level, I know what the medical conditions or crises are that they're heading towards if they don't deal with things, and the early signs and symptoms and how to listen to them. Otherwise, this is the next step. This is the next warning. This is the crisis point. I'd love for people not to get to crisis point, but I know that's how some of us learn. So I know that my predisposition is skin conditions, and that is historically what I've experienced. So it was amazing when Ayurveda allowed me to actually understand, why is my body behaving in this way? Why is it that not everyone gets skin conditions? And then I understood how environment impacted me. So sticking me in heat and humidity with my constitution, not that my constitution's to blame, but also my emotional baggage that I was holding on to, the environment really triggered me, and then it manifested in my skin. Now, I feel like I have been very good at channeling my anger and finding out what is it I desire and putting it into Pitta creative energy. And that's why my skin doesn't give me any problems anymore. And my work of talking about all of this stuff came from a very inner world, intuitive space. And I was like, this is so weird. What are people going to think about me? So actually my journey has been speaking this truth that I get to share with you. So thank you. And my health has transformed. My skin conditions are so much better. And as a result, actually all facets of my life are better, but my skin just opened a doorway into this deeper work. So I'm just curious, I reckon that you might have like this Pitta dosha thing going on where your predisposition to being out of balance, being triggered by certain environments, particularly heat and humidity, is the eczema, is the dermatitis. And is your eczema and dermatitis actually historically dry and flaky as well? Did it have a different energy behind it? So even back then, was your skin speaking to you? Now, I know some people would go into the pathology and say, oh, they've got the triad of like the asthma, the skin dermatitis, eczema, and then the hay fever. And then that goes back to baby days. But hopefully, I'm not going to go into that. Hopefully, you can see how many layers there are to this work. And the key is just about getting started with, right, I create this awareness. Now, Jin's giving me even more insight. And holy cow, I didn't realize I was going to get this much information. What do I do about it? I don't want to just create awareness. I want to tell you this next step is about processing your emotions. So I have just wrapped up an incredible 6-week release course. It has been the 7th round. It just keeps on getting better and better. This is what I'd say would be the entryway to learning the release process with me and how I facilitate it with my clients. It is incredible going on this journey in this group. I barely share what happens with my clients simply because it's such a private and a sacred space. But that group has wrapped up. That's opened up doorways for people who now have that foundation to do further work with me and expand on all sorts of fancy energetic concepts. But the next group that will be running live is going to happen in August 2024. So I usually have a little window in July where it will be open. You can join the waitlist. It's theartoflisteningtobody.com/release. And there have been people who have been inquiring about one-to-one work. I've just been having incredible calls. One-to-one is like the option where you get everything, and I will actually facilitate the process with you, and you get to learn and you get to come on release. You get all of it. So I really encourage you that if anything that I've shared with you, I say that all of my clients, mainly the one-to-ones, just say, I just know that it's all connected and this is what I want to do with you. Please fill out an application. Just depending on your answers, I'm going to direct you. But if it is looking like one-to-one is quite a possibility, then we will jump on a call and just explore the avenues. And if it's not one-to-one, I have a pathway for you. The key is about just getting started. And why I'm really sharing this now is because with this timeline, there have been some people that I've been connecting in with, and I have been recommending that they do a VIP day with me, which is a 6-hour online session. I'll drop the information of this in the show notes as well so you can explore it. I was sharing with my group today that I feel like that page was really well written because people just read it and know it's for them. I still do an application for VIP Day, but it's 6 hours with me. We go through a really thorough history. I connect all the dots for you. And then you get a video recording, you get a transcription, and you're going to know exactly what you need to work on when the release course comes by. You get access to the Moth Portal membership for a couple of months, and I'm going to direct you on some things that you can work on in the next handful of months for it to really land and just really prep your body to go into something like release. Because I do recognize that the way I talk about this work, it can sound scary. People love it, they resonate with it, but they're like, I don't want to experience this. I don't know if I've got capacity. All the fears come up. So I trust, I honor your timing. There is lots on the table for you to dive into. And if you've ever got any questions, just reach out to me. I do have to say my personal Facebook page is the best, not my business page. So it's just Jin Ong. And you'll know you're on my page because I've just changed my background cover photo to horsies. Reach out to me there and give me a little bit of an overview, share with about where you're at. But if you're considering one-to-one, reach out to me and I'll send you an application and I'll guide you with some questions. Connect on a video call. You can feel into all the energy of it and then decide what is the right next step for you. Okay, so lots in this. Thank you, Michelle, for this question, letting me answer it. And if you have asked a question, I always love if you just send me a message and let me know what you got out of it. Thank you and have an amazing rest of your week.